Hey everybody, Aaron J. Anderson here with another video. This is part 2 of my new Panasonic G7 series. One thing I'm really happy with is I'm back with my Panasonic cameras and the app's amazing. I just love to use this. I'm using it right now to focus on my my eye. Let's see, let's move that. See, it's focusing on my eye. Really cool. Can see if I'm in there. Anyways. First concern is shutter shock, and if you don't know what shutter shock is, it's basically when the shutter hits, it vibrates the camera. Also, it can vibrate in a lot of cases lens elements inside the lens, and that can cause ghosting, blurring, softness, and double images. And I didn't read about that till after I got the camera, and it's not the only camera that has that. Some of the other Panasonics do, and other cameras from other manufacturers do it as well. A lot of times you just don't know or notice it or whatever, but I heard that this camera has it, so I need to desperately check that because I don't want to go on a paid shoot, get back and see my shots are blurry. So I heard that the G7 has shutter shock on tripods but not handheld, on some lenses and not other lenses, at some shutter speeds and not other shutter speeds. And so I did some tests. I already did it. I'm going to go to the computer and check it out. But it was very grueling because I had to take so many shots at different shutter speeds. So what I did was I set up a scene right over here to my right, and I first put the 42.2 millimeter on there on a tripod, and I kept the exposure a third of a stop over, and I took a shot very carefully, starting from 1 second all the way up to 2,000th of a second on the tripod. Then I did a handheld shot of the same things, but I started at 10th of a second because hand holding it 1 second is, I think, is impossible. Maybe you can do it, I can't. So I started at 1/10 of a second, which was kind of hard. And then I did it with all the lenses that I have, the 3 lenses. And now I'm going to take them in and we're going to go over them and show you, is there shutter shock, is there not shutter shock? The Panasonic G7 has electronic shutter, and if you use the electronic shutter, you'll get no shutter shock because there's no curtain shutter hitting into anything. So the e-shutter will work. However, the e-shutter, of course, if you're filming something fast, you're going to get the jello effect because it scans the sensor. So when something comes in, you're going to have that jello effect that you've probably heard about. That is predominantly in video, but the electronic shutter has that. And also, if you're really I saw some tests that people were shooting with the e-shutter 5 stops underexposed on purpose to test the quality difference from the mechanical shutter and the electronic shutter, and then they brought those levels back up, and the e-shutter showed more green and some more noise, but that's extreme. So I think the e-shutter will work most of the time. However, you can't use flash. So for me, if you go to my website, aaronjandersonphotography.com, check my photography, I use off-camera flash all the time. So the e-shutter is really not great for me, so I want to do this test to see if I'm going to get shutter shock on the mechanical shutter. So let's go into the computer and check out the photos. Okay, Aaron J. Anderson here at the computer, and I'm going to show you the outcome of this tedious test. I had to take a bunch of photos at every different shutter speed to check for this shutter shock. As I said in the video, I've got my 3 lenses here. The 14 to 42, I'm only going to test on 14 millimeters because these other 2 lenses cover what I need in that. All these tests were shot at 200 ISO except the 14 millimeter because it was at 3.5. When I started getting closer to higher shutter speeds, I had to start increasing the ISO, but the ISO has no impact on shutter shock. Each lens I did on a tripod and handheld. Let's go for a tripod. On the 42 millimeter, let's go to this first picture. Now, if we look at the info, I started all the tripod shots on all these lenses, I start at 1 second of a shutter. That's a real slow shutter. So I just used my finger, pushed the shutter as I tried to do my best not to shake anything. So we might get some softness at some of these. And the ISO 200 and the f-stop, because it's, 1 second is so bright, I had to crank this to f11. And what are we at? 43 millimeters. So that's like a 50 millimeter equivalent. And out of these, let's go back here. The 42 millimeter, I have image stabilization, and the 14 to 42 image stabilization, and I kept those on because I usually keep those on when I work. And the 25 millimeter Olympus does not have image stabilization. So keep that in mind, that image stabilization is on both of these. So tripod shot, let's get to it. I am absolutely happy to announce that there is absolutely no shutter shock on the 42.5 millimeter lens, no matter what shutter speed. This is 1 second, folks. Let's look at that. Look at that. Now, I wouldn't say it's tack sharp because, again, it's at 1 second, and I'm pushing it with my finger, so it picked up a little bit of vibration, but even with that, this is completely acceptable. I mean, look at this, really nice. None of these files have been manipulated in any way. I didn't add any sharpness, no contrast, no nothing. They're just the JPEGs straight into this folder you're looking at. Look at that, no shutter shock, no ghosting, no blurring, no double images, nothing. Now I want to go quick because look at all this. I ain't going to go through all these, but I'm just going to prove to you that there's no shutter shock on this lens. Now this is 1/2 of a shutter, 200 ISO. Look at that. No shutter shock. There is no shutter shock. Let's go. I'm going to try to go through these quick because I don't want to bore you with just saying the same thing over and over. 1/4 of a second. No shutter shock. And by the way, I focused on all of these shots, whether on the tripod or handheld, right here. That's why I'm going here. If you want to look the whole, there's no shutter shock anywhere. I like to use this coral because you can see all the fine details in the coral. No shutter shock. I don't want to go through all these and bore you. Let's just hurry up here. 1/10 of a second. No shutter shock. At 1/10 of a second, we're like tack sharp. Now the camera is not picking up the subtle vibrations of pushing the shutter button at 1/10 of a second. Image stabilization is on. 50 millimeters. Tack sharp. This lens is amazing. Okay. Let's just skip a couple. Let's go up to, what is this? 1/80th of a second. Tack sharp. No shutter shock. I'm going to keep going. Let's just jump up to here. Now, people were saying that they get shutter shock. They said if you're going to shoot mechanical shutter, that you should shoot above 350 of a shutter. But I'm showing you even at 1 second of a shutter, there's no shutter shock. Look at that. Tack sharp. What are we at? 200th of a second. Right here. 320. Now, they said 320 or above, but I mean, no shutter shock. Okay, now what about handheld? Because they said that when you're on a tripod, you get more shutter shock. Handheld, you don't get as much shutter shock because when you're holding it, it dampens the shutter shock. But I just showed you on the tripod, there's 0. And let's go for the handheld. Now look at this. On the handheld shots, I start at 1/10 of a second because anything slower than that is almost impossible for me to hold still. So 1/10 of a second with image stabilization, we get a little bit of blurriness here. You can argue and say, look, that's shutter shock, but that's 1/10 of a second, and my hands aren't that steady, and we're getting a little bit of a blurring here, and that is because of the slow shutter. I guarantee you. We got 20th of a second. Now we can see at 20th of a second, I'm able to hold it still, and it's not tack sharp, but there's no shutter shock at all on these. Just regular motion blur at such slow shutters. This is 30th of a second. Now, like I said, I wouldn't say this is tack sharp, but all these are blowing up too. I mean, you take it back to where people are going to stare at it, you're not going to see nothing anyways. But I mean, regardless, there is just no shutter shock. Let's go up to this one. 60th of a second. 60th of a second is about as slow of a shutter I would usually shoot for like weddings when people are dancing around. I find that slow moving people I can get, whatever. So this is kind of a 60th of a shutter is something I use quite a lot, and there's no shutter shock, nothing. And if you guys don't know the rule, if you're this is 43 millimeter lens, but on the crop it's actually a 50. 85. Sorry, I made that mistake before. It's an 85 millimeter. I kept saying 50, I think, again, didn't I? Anyways, holding it at these slow shutter speeds is really hard, and you can see no shutter shock, barely any motion blur. 200th of a second, no shutter shock. Let's go back up. Let's go up here. Look, we're way up here now. There's no shutter shock. There's no shutter shock on anything. So I'm really happy to please. There is absolutely zero shutter shock on 42 millimeters. These are just ridiculous. Okay, this is what, oh my gosh, where was I? Oh, 25 millimeters. This is the Olympus. Now this has no image stabilization, so this is going to be a little different. We are on the tripod. We are shooting at a ridiculous 1 second. Look at that, 1 second. It's tack sharp, no shutter shock. There's not even any vibration motion blur here at 1 second with no image stabilization on a tripod. Let's just jump some of these because this is just so boring here. 1/4 of a second, no shutter shock. A little bit of blurring here. You can say, oh look, shutter shock, but this is so sharp. It's like ridiculous. Let's just jump up here. 20th of a second, no shutter shock, absolutely tack sharp. I hope I'm getting my point across here. 100th of a second, no shutter shock. Let's just go to the last one. 2,000th of a second at f1.8, 25 millimeter, no image stabilization on a tripod, no shutter shock. Let's go to handheld now. At 1/10 of a second, clearly I can't hold that still with no image stabilization. 1/10 of a second. This is not shutter shock. This is I can't hold the camera that still at that slow of a shutter speed. Okay, what's this shutter speed? 20th of a second. Now we can see I don't do too bad at 20th of a second, which this is 25 millimeters, so this is 50 millimeters at 20th of a second handheld with no image stabilization. Looks pretty good, pretty sharp, no shutter shock. Just go here. 30th of a second, we can see now at 30, I'm getting a little sharper here because I can hold it better. No shutter shock. Let's see. 60th of a second, tack sharp, no shutter shock. We're at f5.6. Look at the coral, like in here, because I was focusing here. This is the sharpest area. No shutter shock. What are we at here? 500th of a second, of course, no shutter shock. Tack sharp. So that's handheld, guys. Handheld, 50 millimeters, no image stabilization on the Olympus lens, and no shutter shock. 14 millimeter tripod. This is the kit lens. We are at 1 second of an exposure, no shutter shock. And this is about this is pretty darn sharp for a kit lens, actually. Not too bad. Let's just skip one here so you guys don't say I missed one. 1/4 of a second. What's going on here? There we go. Look at that, tack sharp. This is sharp, no shutter shock. And I am shocked. I am so happy. 20th of a second, no shutter shock. Let's just jump up here. You can see how the background gets so dark with the high shutter speeds. 2,000th of a second. Now we're at ISO 800. Tack sharp, no shutter shock. But how does it do handheld, you ask? Handheld, this is 1/10 of a second. no shutter shock, tack sharp, handheld, 14 millimeters, 10th of a second, 30th of a second, tack sharp, no shutter shock. I don't know if you guys are still hanging in here on this video, but I just feel like I don't want to skip something here. 125th of a second, handheld, 14 millimeters, no shutter shock. You can see the edge is starting to get a little soft though on this lens for whatever reason, but right where I focused right here, no shutter shock, 400th of a second. So that's it. Well, you know what? Let me just go to the last one. This is 2000th of a second. No shutter shock. There you go, guys. I am super happy that I have no shutter shock, because when I started reading about it, I was like, man, I might have to, keep the Sony because of this. But there you go. If you got any questions, please leave some comments below. Go check out my portfolio on AaronJAndersonphotography.com. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.